Welcome back to What You Will Learn. My name is Adam Ashton.
And my name is Adam Jones. Today we're taking you through the best bits of the cold start problem by Andrew Chen, using network effects to scale your product.
You might have heard of the term network effects in maybe business class, or maybe some hotshot in the office is spruiking it, trying to sound smart. But I guess beyond the basic definitions that you might read in the textbook or on Investopedia or something, that very few people know how network effects really work. And even more importantly, nobody knows how they can actively create them rather than just accidentally stumbling upon them.
Yeah, it's a little buzzword, I think, for startups and entrepreneurs who are just trying to sound good when they're speaking to other people at meetups. But you'd say 95% of people out there don't know actually what the hell they are.
Yeah.
But our man here, Andrew Chen, he really does know what they are because he was an early employee at Uber and he saw the power of network effects and how they work and how hard they are to cultivate firsthand.
And then he also, after that, he moved to work for the investment sort of VC firm Andreessen Horowitz, A16Z or Z, depends how you want to pronounce that. And he's been closely involved with a whole bunch of like unicorn startups that have harnessed network effects and achieved massive growth.
So the first phase of this framework we're going to be speaking about in this episode is called, like the title suggests, the cold start problem. And this is what every single product faces in its inception. If you think about it, if you got a telephone and you're the first person to invent the telephone, if there's nobody out there who's got another telephone, it's useless.
That first telephone, you might seem like, wow, I've got this awesome new invention, but you can't call anyone.
That's right. But if all your mates and everyone you know has got a telephone, then the telephone is something that you can't live without. So, in between, the first person who got the telephone and invented it, they obviously had the cold start problem and they were able to solve it with, the product that we use every day.
That's right. If there aren't enough users on a social network, no one to interact with, everyone's going to leave. If a workplace chat product doesn't have all your colleagues on there, it's not going to be adopted by the whole office. If a marketplace doesn't have enough buyers or enough sellers or enough products listed, it's going to go months without a product sale and it's going to very quickly die. So really, this is the cold start problem. If you are trying to start up a new business or a new product with network effects, if you don't overcome this cold start problem very quickly, you're going to die.
You or the product?
The product's going to die.
Okay, that's good.
And
good
hopefully
context.
not you, but yeah.
You'll die one day, but
everyone's going to die.
The product will die before you.
Yeah.
So in classic usage, so the person who's shooting shit by the water cooler, their definition of the network effect is something that happens when products get more valuable as more people use them. All right, it's a pretty simple definition, but it's a really good starting point, I think, to begin with.
Simple, but fair enough. At Uber, where Big Chenny used to work, the more users that join the app, then the more likely it would be that riders would quickly find someone to take them from A to B. It also meant the easier it was for drivers to fill their time with trips, increasing their earnings. And then, like this virtuous cycle from here, more drivers means less wait time. Less wait time means more riders are going to jump on, more pay for the drivers, and so on.
Be like the telephone, it gets more valuable with the more people who's on it, and so forth. So it happens in every place where there is a network effect, where it does increase in value. And a lot of people at this surface level would say, hey, we're going to point to a law called Metcalfes Law to describe the whole network effects phenomenon. And this is where it says the systemic value of compatibly communicating devices grows as the square of the number. So it's not a linear growth in value. This goes the square root, the exponential, and from there to the moon probably and beyond.
That's right. So it's saying that it grows by the square. So not just adding one person makes it that one unit better, but the more and more people, the more networks there are, the more connections there can be between different nodes of this network, then the value more than doubles. It just keeps going, as you say, just to the moon. But there's a problem with the old Metcalfes Law. Everyone loves to whip it out. It's an old law that kind of worked for a little bit and it, intuitively kind of makes sense. But if you kind of stop reading there, that's pretty much as far as the high-level strategic thinking goes of the old Johnny at the water cooler who's trying to spout off and trying to look cool.
Yeah, well, things can't go exponentially forever for one thing, right? Like you go past the moon to the Mars and before you're in, it's just at some point it does have an S-curve, so it does behave quite differently to that. Nor does it really talk about the quality of user engagement or sometimes when you're an active user at the very start and you've just signed up, and there's a degraded experience when you just get flooded by too many users to overcrowd a certain network as well. So there is a lot more to it than just a simple quote, right? Like more nodes is better.
Yeah, that's right. Just thinking more nodes is better is probably what most people are thinking, just grow. But you got to think about a whole bunch of other different factors that go into it as well. And so what our mate Andrew Chen is saying, that Metcalfes Law, it's sort of broken, and he's got a new law, Meerkats Law, that he kind of stumbled upon. I don't know if he did it, but he's claiming it anyway, about looking at the mathematics of animal populations and specifically meerkats.
So this explains the cold start problem a lot better, according to the Chen man. So there are many types of social animals that benefit by living together, and whether that's from coordinated hunting, finding mates, resisting and taking down predators. In that sense, more nodes in the network are better.
And of course, if for whatever reason the population starts to decline, then those benefits quickly go away as well. They become more susceptible to collapse.
But then if you go the other way, if the population grows too quickly and you've got too many nodes and then you've got only so much food around and animals to hunt on, then you're going to have overpopulation there, and that's going to have negative advantages. So with that, you're going to have your population plateau. So this sort of does map onto the network effects much better, and it sounds a lot familiar to the business examples we've already been mentioning.
Yeah, that's right. So with the meerkats, if there are not enough meerkats in the mob, they can't warn each other of danger. They're more likely to get picked off by some sneaky leopard that pops up and grabs a couple of meerkats for dinner. And then, of course, it begins this vicious cycle downward from there. Once the leopard's grabbed a couple, there's even less to then warn, and then the lion comes along and grabs a couple, and then the cheetah comes along and grabs a couple, and all of a sudden, the meerkats are cooked.
Yeah, you don't want that. So the technology product metaphor here is obvious. If you think about Uber, right? Like you've got your customers are the meats you're trying to hunt and eat, but if you've got too many people trying to hunt the smaller amount of meerkats, you're trying to... mixing metaphors here, but if you've got lions eating meerkats, too many lions, too many Uber drivers, not enough customers, then it's all going to fail, right? So, but if you got not enough drivers and too many customers, then the customer's going to think this sucks. So in both cases, there is a right balance to achieve there. But at the end of the day, this growth curve, it can't last forever because there are only so many resources that the lions can munch on. I've kind of cooked this metaphor now, but you can only support a finite population. So things that like you think are going to grow forever in this magical curve upwards, it doesn't really work like that. You're going to hit that point where you've saturated the market.
Yeah, that's right. For the meerkats, they're all going to be competing over bugs and fruit. And if there's too many meerkats living in too small an environment, there's overcrowding, which doesn't help. And then some of the meerkats might start to venture off and try something else. Similarly, for if you end up with a social network and then there's too many people on there and there's a whole bunch of crap in your feed that's not relevant to you. If the network's too big, then you might think, oh, this sucks, I'm not interested in this anymore, and you start to head off as well. And obviously just the pure mathematics of if you keep scaling and growing, there's eventually you get to everybody. And if you get to everybody, then you can't grow anymore.
So really there's actually 5 primary stages in this cold start theory as we go up a totally different curve, a bit more like an S-curve. Firstly, you've got the cold start problem. We're going to tackle this in a bit more detail later. And this is the idea that most networks are going to fail, right? Because at the very start, as we were saying, if you're starting a company like Uber, why the hell would a driver go on there? There's no customers. Why the hell would a customer go on there? Social media, everything like that. It's just pointless for everyone. So it's a really hard problem to start, and no one's going to be sticking around. So it requires getting all the right users and content on the same network at the same time, which is bloody hard.
Definitely. If you can't execute that launch properly and get enough people on that network to make it valuable for people to stick around, then basically you're cooked.
You're done.
You don't die. You don't die, but definitely whatever you're doing dies. After that, then you've got the tipping point. So it takes a hell of a lot of effort to build through these first little atomic, he calls them atomic networks, because obviously they're very small. It's like Uber, they just start in one city. They don't start all around the world because it'd be so much harder. But you start in one city, and maybe you grow to the next city. Eventually, if you're winning these markets and building up, kind of what happens next? How do you get to this point where you can start to take off a bit?
Now, the third point, once you've got your atomic networks in and you've got sort of a scalable way to scale up your atomic networks, it's all about working furiously to strengthen the network effects as much as you can here and sustain growth. So you'd be zooming in on things like the acquisition rates, how your engagement is, and how the overall economics and commercial side works.
Yeah, so that's the third stage, the escape velocity. The fourth stage is hitting the ceiling. That's when we said once there's too many meerkats in that mob and they're all competing over berries, there's just kind of a point where this viral growth has to slow down. Once you've got all the professionals on LinkedIn, there's not that many more people that can join the party.
And finally, number 5, you got the moat, and this focuses on the network effects to fend off competitors. So if you did create the first Uber app, what you've solved there, it's another step change, more difficult for someone else to come in and take over the market because the network effects are already there. Drivers have already got the app, and customers have already got their habits in downloading Uber.
For the rest of this episode, we're going to look at the first couple of stages, the cold start problem and the tipping point, because that's probably where most people are getting started. And
Man, escape velocity, it's just a party from there on in, I think. I think you're just unicorn, you're loaded, you're having Lambos and you're partying on a yacht. You don't even have to work at that stage. So we're going to look
That's right. It's a totally different lifestyle, totally different thing that we're dealing with there. But yeah, the cold start problem, that's your grow or die. It either works or you're cooked.
So at the start of an atomic network, there's an important dynamic that is at play here. So there's something called the hard side, and this is where the minority of users create disproportionate value and as a result have a disproportionate amount of power. And this is where you as the founder of the company need to really focus on and solve this hard side problem of the network.
Yeah, that's right. The hard side, they're contributing so much to your network, but they're also pretty fickle. They're harder to acquire, they're harder to retain. If you think about some different hard sides across some different industries, for social networks, there's a whole bunch of people looking at content, but there's a lot less people actually making the content. So the creators are the hard side. If you look at app stores, a whole bunch of people want to play Candy Crush, but there aren't that many people actually developing apps. So developers are the hard side. If you think at marketplaces, Airbnb or Alibaba or whatever, there's a whole bunch of people wanting to stay at someone's place. There's a lot less people actually willing to put their house up on the market. So kind of the sellers in a marketplace, they're the hard side.
Yeah, just a real world example. I was having a chat with a mate yesterday. He's doing a startup where he's trying to get all the samples from different product suppliers around the construction industry and sell them on to all the consumers, right? So he's got a two-sided marketplace there where he needs to have suppliers give him all the samples of their products. And then he's got the other side of the marketplace, which is all the architects and specifiers looking to do it. So, in this example, the hard side is definitely the suppliers. And, that's what he's focusing on at the very start, and he read this book as well. So we were chatting about this.
Yeah, so it's kind of obvious that the hard side is
the hard side.
The hard side, that's hard. That's you want to focus your efforts there because that's going to be harder to get later on. If on Uber, if you've got a whole bunch of riders and it takes 45 minutes because there's not enough drivers, the drivers is obviously the hard side. If there's a whole bunch of people on Airbnb and only 3 houses to pick from, you've got to focus all your efforts on this hard side first.
So there's a range of different ways to solve this issue. And a good example that he comes up with here is Tinder. Now, if you think about Tinder, if you go on, there's really, in terms of heterosexual relationships, there's probably a lot of horny blokes looking for some really beautiful women. So the horny blokes are pretty easy to get on there and very incentivized. They throw the Hail Marys out at 3 a.m. on a Saturday morning, and the Hail Marys they're throwing them out at are the hot women. So the hot women here are obviously the hard side, right? If you get a whole bunch of hot women in, it's working well. It's pretty much for any party. If you have a house party and you're a bit younger, getting a whole bunch of hot women into the event is going to make it a lot better. Maybe I'm venturing off a bit here.
They said that statistically, men swipe right, give the green tick of approval to 56% of women or something like that. So, almost more than 1 in 2, they're swiping right compared to swiping left. Whereas women, on the other hand, are only swiping 5% of the time, 1 in 20. So clearly it is the hard side there because it seems like, men are going for the quantity approach, women are going the quality approach. So it kind of means that if blokes are just swiping right a whole bunch of the time, the ladies are going to get the matches more often than not. They're going to match with the people that they select, whereas the guys are just the spray and pray. They're just hoping to get a match. they're just swiping as much as they can. Of course, the problem is if there's too many of those horny blokes and not enough of the women, then there's too many conversations. There's too much.
It's a bit creepy.
That's right.
It'd be very creepy.
If you got too many different chats going on and too many different unwarranted messages flowing through, then you're probably going to stop swiping for a while.
So this, like any business, is really going to be the focus at the start. And there's different ways of solving it. So one way that Tinder got the job done was Sean and Justin, who were the founders of the business. They had a big plan. What they thought is they would throw a big party for a really popular, hyper-connected friend on campus and use that to promote Tinder. They'd make it an awesome party, be free booze, a lot of free food, and be very exclusive about who actually gets to attend these parties, and which is probably an important thing in terms of status when you're at a university.
Yeah, that's right. They wheeled out all the big guns. They had limos to this massive fancy house in LA where everything had been set for a massive party. There was one catch, was when you got to the door, you had to download the Tinder app, and there was a bouncer checking that you had the app, and that was kind of it. You check the app, you sign up, and then you show the bouncer, then you're into the party, have a big night, and then you realize the next day, you're like, oh, what's this new app on my phone? And amazingly, they found that 95% of that initial batch, those initial 500 people, 95% of these started using the app every day for 3 hours.
Yeah.
That's pretty
It's
massive.
insane, isn't it? Well, at that party, you're walking around, there's a whole bunch of hot people you'd like to speak to, but you don't get to, right? So the next day you wake up and you go, geez, who was that person in the red hair or whatever? And then you start swiping, you find them, and then it is something. It is something new, and it is a bit more natural. The ratio is probably 50-50 in that sense. You're not going to have all the horny men overcrowding the network.
And that's why Metcalfes Law of just the more people the better is a bit flawed. This was the highest one-day spike ever on Tinder, and it wasn't just 500 people, but it was 500 of the right people, the types of people that they wanted and needed to help grow the app further.
Yeah, and then thinking about that atomic network problem, you're really solving it in one area for one university, and that is something you could, take again somewhere else and somewhere else. So you're really focusing all your energy on the one beachhead, really, and then moving from there in solving the hard problem.
That's right. They kept replicating these campus launches with these parties. They quickly got to 400 downloads and 1,500 downloads in a month, and then 500,000 downloads the month after that. And then obviously that's when viral growth starts taking over, because you hear of your mate who says, oh, I'm on this new app and I'm meeting all these good-looking people, and you think, okay, well, I better get on that app as well. So that's when your viral growth starts to take over.
And you notice there, you're probably throwing a fair bit of money to solve that problem, right? I think all the solutions we're about to go here, it's like you're throwing a fair bit of money at solving this cold start problem, because at the start, there's just no incentive to get on it. So you need to sort of game it in a way that gets them on there. And then, once you got your 500,000 per month downloading it, the rest is really history, and you don't really need to throw every single party to get and give them free drinks to sort of lure them in there, eh?
Yeah, that's right. A different strategy altogether. LinkedIn kind of almost went the other way, where you jump on, someone says, oh, hey, I'm on this new networking site called LinkedIn, and then it's awesome, I'm meeting all these cool people on there, and I'm creating all these business opportunities, and then your mate says, oh, awesome, I'm going to jump on. They go to LinkedIn, and it pops up and it says, sorry, you need an invite to sign up to this app. So, what? What the hell? That seems like a weird way to try to grow a company.
What's the psychology of that, Astro? It's like, there's probably a better word for it, but you want what you can't have, sort of thing.
Oh, totally. If you can't get in, all you want to do is get in.
Oh, yeah. Clubhouse had the same thing, yeah.
Clubhouse was at the start, it was purely like, I think each person got 2 or 3 invite codes, but then because it kind of makes it a bit exclusive. If you're on the inside and all your mates are on the outside, and you say, hey, I've got 3 invites to join this exclusive app, you kind of be seen as like a bit of the king of your group then. Yeah,
so LinkedIn, when they did it at the time, it was pretty controversial to just, you got your Facebooks, your MySpaces, which was a bit of a very non-professional, and they were trying to launch that sort of thing in the professional context. But like, where could they focus on? So one thing they did, of course, was invite only, but then who do they focus all their energy on? And the hard side here, what they focused on was actually like that mid-tier professional.
Big Reid Hoffman, the startup of Reid Hoffman, the founder of LinkedIn, he said there's people like Bill Gates are at the top. Bill Gates is getting so many requests, but because they're getting so many requests, they can't actually deal with it. And they've got enough opportunities that Bill Gates doesn't want intros to random people on LinkedIn, and he's not going to probably accept those cold messages and say, hey, can we do a deal with Microsoft? I suppose at the other end of the spectrum as well, the new up-and-coming hotshots, they probably don't have enough value to offer anybody on LinkedIn either. But in between those two, the middle group, that's where they're building, they're hustling, they're trying things. They're also getting fewer requests, so they're probably actually more open to intros, and they're actually going to take meetings, and things are actually going to happen as a result of these connections on LinkedIn.
Yeah, that's it. You go like that, mid-level manager or even up to a CEO of some companies, and they're not getting asked every day what to do. And so if you do ask them, then they're probably going to say yes. A bit like when we started our podcasting, right? Like there was a tier that made sense. We're not going to aim for the very low people because no one's going to listen, but we probably can't hit the very top people as well. So to see the initial network in this middle tier of the hierarchy, the product was designed to be invite only, as we said. By focusing on their own network, so the people who initially invested in the company, they reached out to the people they knew because they were all on the same sort of level in that tier, trying to hustle and meet people. And from there, it sort of expanded and expanded and expanded with that exclusivity and I guess some level of status required to be in it. And then at a certain point when they solved it there, then they could open it up the floodgates, hey?
That's right. Once they'd already kind of built a valuable network of the right people on there, then because it was valuable, then you can start opening it up. If they open it up from the start and you get a whole bunch of crap on there, those important middle tier people, the really valuable people, they're just going to see this is just flooded with no hopers here. So they wouldn't bother joining. So that it would have been kind of cooked.
Another way to solve the cold start problem is a strategy called come for the tool and stay for the network. I really like this one. And this is how our Instagram did it at the very start.
Yeah, at the start, Instagram was... well, not the very, very start because it wasn't even Instagram. But once they eventually became Instagram, it was all about the photo filtering, as in the tool of where you could take really good photos on your phone. And people were like, okay, this is awesome. People start seeing it popping up on their Facebook feeds with a link back to Instagram. This really nice looking photo of, an old high school friend who you knew was a dropkick, but they've taken these masterful, professional looking photos. And you're like, how the hell can this person do it? Surely I can do it too. So you think, okay, Instagram, they've got these filters that works with your phone. So I'm going to go to Instagram for the tool of taking sick photos.
Yeah, well, at the very start, you didn't go on there at all for the social feed. You went in there for the atomic network, really, and in terms of psychographics, I guess, of the people who are really into those flashy photos and using a really impressive and useful tool in editing photos. And then that's all they were doing at the start. And then, as you said, Asho, they started posting. And then initially, it was all about a tool, but then more and more people going in for the tool. The value of the network increased, and then sort of because the value of the network increased, that became more valuable than the actual tool itself. And then the network effect is the whole reason why it took over and, took over the world now. And that's the whole reason you're going on Insta.
Yeah, exactly. Initially, they found that 65% of people after 6 months of Instagram, they weren't following their friends and stuff. They were just following photographers or famous people or whatever. But then they found now it totally switched. After a couple of years, 82% of photos being uploaded were hashtag no filter. They didn't have the filters on them. And so they realized that, okay, well, the tool that initially got people in, no one's even using it anymore because everyone's just hanging out with their friends and seeing what they're up to.
So that's it, mate. So you can just build something really good to use and then add a bit of network effects in it as well. We've got another strategy here, paying up for the launch. This idea comes up a bit later in this section, but in essence, if you've got a chicken and egg problem, right, like which is the network effect, two-sided marketplace, you can just buy the chicken.
That's right.
And the chicken's going to create eggs, and then you got chicken creating eggs, eggs creating chickens.
That's right. Buying the chicken is one way to do it. If you got the money, it would raise questions of is this ever going to be profitable? Like stories of Amazon, their first 17 quarters in a row, they were losing money because they were just buying chickens, and then they realized, well, are we ever actually going to make money out of this? Similarly, like Uber. Have you watched that Super Pumped yet?
No.
Yeah.
I should get on it, eh?
Yeah, probably before this episode would have been good because we were talking about Uber, but that's all right.
Hit pause and watch it now.
They lost billions of dollars, specifically in China, because they were trying to compete with the rival company there, and they were just burning money. Billions of dollars, and people are wondering, what are you doing? Are you ever going to make money here?
They're buying a lot of chickens, aren't they? They bought us. They bought us. We were chickens.
We were chickens in the Uber, the egg laying. We didn't lay too many eggs though.
Yeah. I laid a lot of eggs. I laid 1,000 plus eggs. We're both, context, listen, we both, hustling at uni, trying to make a bit of money sort of thing. And both Uber driving. And it was this initial incentive of give $200, get $200 by just doing one thing.
Yeah, that's right.
Uber Eats does the same thing. All the food things, all the Marley Spoon, everyone does that.
Yeah, at first there's some kind of incentive to get on there, it's going to cost the company a hell of a lot of money because, if they're giving you $200 and me $200 just for signing up and doing a drive, I haven't given them $400 of value yet, but they're hoping that obviously over enough time, it's going to pay for itself.
So in summary, mate, I think this book is really phenomenal for people who've got this specific problem, who are starting a business like this. It's an insanely valuable book, right?
I would say for that, the small percentage of businesses that are trying to harness network effects, it's a must read.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. And I think even if you're not, there's still definitely ideas for other businesses as well. But if you're definitely in this, it's an absolute must read.
So in summary, at the very start, if you are launching a business when you're trying to get the benefits of network effects, firstly, network effects is super powerful. If you can harness them, you can create a moat and a highly valuable business that no one else can come in. But at the very start, you have this issue, the cold start problem, the chicken and egg story, and you got the hard side, which you need to focus on. The hot chicks scanning onto the app, the Uber drivers, the people who are going to make your content on YouTube. These are the ones you need to incentivize at the start. And it's not just going to be a simple cakewalk here and free. It's probably going to cost a lot of resources to solve that, to actually be the kindling on the fire and the ignition to get it going.
If you're trying to start a network effects company or product, if you do get through this cold start problem, through the tipping point, through the escape velocity, and then you're just making a moat, incredible. Some of the biggest businesses in the world are these, Amazon, Uber, Airbnb, Facebook, Instagram, all these massive, pretty much all the most recent massive success stories are these network effects companies. But of course, if you don't get through that, because you're so reliant on the network, if you can't get through that initial cold start problem, if you can't solve that and there's nobody on there, it's a piece of shit. So it's really a all or nothing type of thing. It's really a solve the cold start problem quickly or die, you and the company.
So in this episode, we gave a bunch of strategies to solve it. In the book, there's going to be a lot more, but the ones that we covered that we really liked was the invite-only mechanics, which was from LinkedIn, or Instagram sort of strategy, which is building a really good tool, and then having that as the lure, then the network effects taking over later. And finally, if you got a chicken and egg problem, buy the chicken, pay up for the launch, and they'll be the one creating the eggs to get the overall future benefits.